Ladies and gentlemen, my name is The Reckonist, and I'm here to tell you about Tales from the Borderlands, and if it's worth your money. Just before we get going, the footage I will be using is of Episode 1, which I played this afternoon in its entirety, and now that the game is actually finished and Episode 5 is out, I view it as a finished product and something which I can critique. As this is a purely story-driven game, I have turned down the game audio, and if you're really allergic to spoilers, go ahead and minimize the video. Okay, so Borderlands is a game series created by Randy Pitchford and Gearbox. It is a first-person shooter. However, this particular game is not by Gearbox or Randy Pitchford, and it is not a first-person shooter. Tales from the Borderland is an interactive story set in the Borderlands universe written by Telltale Games, which is great news to me and many other people who, well, let's just say Randy Pitchford and Gearbox have a reputation. Colonial Marines. The game itself is a pretty much two-type Telltale game, which is an interactive narrative rather than a traditional video game, and it is set on the rather poorly fleshed out and very peripheral in the Borderlands game's world of Pandora. Telltale, of course, have a reputation for great games, the latest of which being, The Walking Dead, The Wolf Among Us, and the currently unfinished Game of Thrones title, which its final episode is coming out in the coming weeks, some point in November 2015. And with titles like that on their resume, I think it's fair to say they know their onions when it comes to this genre. Using the Borderlands world of Pandora as a setting gives both Telltale a chance to get a bit more wacky with their worlds, as, well, The Walking Dead and the Game of Thrones worlds for fantasy worlds are rather visually dull, and it also gives Pandora a chance to shine on its own merits, which did not happen in the Borderlands FPS games because it was just completely, as I said before, peripheral to the experience. This game's story will have you play two rather believable characters. Without spoiling too much, you can play Reese, who is a business guy from Hyperion Company, which is the Borderlands equivalent of OCP, and Fiona, who is a con lady living in the slums of Pandora, but both have something in common: they're trying to make it rich. Let's get this out of the way now. You are not playing a superhero vault hunter from the previous Borderlands games. You will not be making skill shots from hundreds of meters away, collecting loot, and murdering hundreds of people. It's not that kind of experience. You actually run into one of those guys during the first episode, a vault hunter, and it will genuinely hammer home that you are not one of those people. You are not superhuman. You are just an ordinary person trying to get through the story. Guns aren't your weapons, decisions are your weapons. Sometimes the prevalent quick-time events have you in combat, but don't worry, your Twitch reaction skills won't have any bearing in this world. The QTEs are kind of generous in the time that they give you, so it's not difficult to just press up or right or mash A for a few seconds. The QTEs mainly serve as a refresher point to sort of jolt you out of the idea that you're watching a film, you are playing a game, because it is very conversation heavy. And it is the narratives and the conversations between the characters, it's where the game gets its praise. All the dialogue feels very well written, and the characters you're interacting with are interesting for the most part. Voice acting is terrific as per Telltale's usual standards. Some famous actors, including Troy Baker and the guy from Family Guy, whose name is Patrick Warburton, I had to research that, who plays Joe Swanson, make an appearance, and are supported by many other famous names, all doing a really good job. There wasn't one point where I thought, that voice actor was a little bit poor, or it was all consistently high quality acting. So it is an interesting universe with great characters and acted very well with some major names involved. So what are the problems? It's the same problem that's been happening to Telltale's games ever since they made it big. It is the game's engine. Now, Telltale games don't need to have a fancy engine capable of consistently achieving 120 frames per second. They're not making those types of games. They're making games about the story where frame rate is not very important. However, they have seemed to have reached the absolute limits of the game engine and the graphical fidelity that they can get out of it. While the game looks great 90% of the time, there are some parts which totally ruin the immersion for me. There is a point where you can see some characters tied up, and the rope, which wrapping around them, just looks like gum. It stretches out as the characters squirm, and it was so poor I actually laughed out loud at a point where I probably wasn't supposed to. It might seem that I'm nitpicking, and I am, because, I'm being a critic, but the fact that I always make this observation about Telltale's games should say something. parts of its strength, the story element, are kind of ruined by its graphical problems. But the fact that this is the only drawback I can find during over the 2 hours which I played should speak volumes, really, but I do fear the next big Telltale game will suffer unless they actually improve or change their engine completely. They've gone as far as they can go with it. It will become a problem as games are getting more and more graphically intense, let's say. It's time to move on for that. So, did I have fun? Yes. Assuming each of the 5 episodes is around 2 hours, as episode 1 was, you'll get a lot of enjoyment out of the game, and even if you're predisposed to Randy Pitchford. And back to the original point of this, is it worth your money? Currently, Tales from the Borderlands is on Steam for 25% off at £14.24, so for roughly 10 hours of the same quality content, absolutely recommend it. But before you buy it, just make sure you're aware this isn't a Borderlands game, this is a Telltale game. As usual, thank you for making it this far, guys. Really appreciate it. If you could click on like and subscribe, you will make my day. And also, if you can follow me on Twitter at IForgotToPlay, I'll leave all relevant links in the description. But thank you so much for watching this, and I'll see you next time.